Welcome back! In the last video, we started using the top-down approach to implement our abort launch functionality. Starting from the front end, going down all the way into our launches model here. We made some good progress, so let's jump right back into it. Alright, so how do we abort? We could call the delete function on our map object. So launch.delete, passing in our launch ID. And that would completely remove our launch from our model. But instead, we're going to do what's common with internet applications in the era of big data. We're going to keep the launch data that was aborted, and instead of removing it, we'll mark that launch as aborted. After all, that data is still useful to us. So instead, we'll get the launch with that ID, and we'll assign it to a variable, a constant we call aborted. And on that object, we set aborted.upcoming to false. After all, aborted missions are no longer upcoming. They've been canceled entirely. And similarly, we'll set aborted.success to false. Even though our aborted object is constant, and we can't reassign it, we can still mutate the properties inside of it by setting, for example, upcoming to false. So our mission is now going to be in our historical list in our front end, and it'll be marked as not successful. Exactly what we want. So in our controller, we'll say const aborted equals abort launch by ID, passing in the launch ID, which we now know exists in our collection. And because we need to get this aborted object for our return body, we need to return it from our model function, return aborted. Looks good. Now, how is this different than if we had done everything, including whether our launch with that ID exists, all in one function? Well, we could probably save ourselves from calling this launches.has function by just using the value returned from launch.get, which should actually be launches.get. After all, we're checking the launches collection. This is why it's good to review our code. So we could use the value that's returned here to check whether the launch with that ID exists or not. Aborted will be undefined if the launch with that ID does not exist. But the get function, as well as the has function from our exists launch with ID, are both relatively inexpensive. With maps, it's very efficient to check whether an element exists and to look up elements by their ID. And the added benefit of separating these two functions is that we now have this utility, exists launch with ID, that we can use for any future routes that deal with launches. We have a fairly simple use case here, but these are the kinds of things that you might want to consider when building your models. And it's good practice to use the same order for your exports as you do for your function definitions. So I'm going to put exists launch with ID right at the top here. All right, I think it's time. Did we do everything right? Can we make requests that abort launches? Let's try deploying our server and see what happens. npm run deploy. All right, looks like we missed something. It happens. Node is telling us that our HTTP abort launch function has already been declared in our router. Let's take a look. All right, again, it's just VS Code automatically importing the wrong file here because we have the HTTP abort launch function in our client as well as in our controller. So I'll remove the client, save the file, and give that another go. Our server is listening on port 8000. Let's try making some requests in Postman. First, let's try creating a new launch, and we'll set the launch date to be July 1st, 2028. Let's see if that creates successfully. We're getting missing required launch property because we renamed our destination to target. All right, I'll save that request and try sending it again. Looks like it was created with flight number 101. So now if we create a new request, say duplicating our post to /launches, we'll rename it to delete/launches/id. We'll change the method to delete and pass in, say, launch 100, which we know will always exist because it's hard-coded into our server. We don't need to pass in a body, so I can remove that, selecting none, and I'll save our request, and let's see if the launch is aborted successfully. Launch isn't found. What's going on? If we get our launches, let's see what we get back. We have a flight with flight number 100, and we have one with flight 101. So our delete call should be working. The problem is that when we set this ID by getting it as a parameter in our request object here in our controller, it comes back as a string. And our index, our ID in the map of launches is a number, an integer like 100. So what we'll need to do in our controller is convert our string into a number, which we could do any number of ways. We could use this shorthand by adding a plus, or we could be explicit and call number on our ID string. Now we'll be able to find launches in our launches model. Let's give this one more go. Let's go to Postman, create our new launch, and try deleting launch 100. Very nice. We're getting our 200 OK response with the object which has been aborted by setting the upcoming flag to false and the success flag to false as well. Now, if we get our launches, we'll see our flight 101, which is upcoming, and our Flight 100, which is no longer upcoming because we've canceled it. Let's check our validation on the abort endpoint. What if we try to delete launch 188, which we know doesn't exist? Looks good. We're getting 404 not found. And in our browser, if we refresh our NASA dashboard, we see our newly added Flight 101 with Flight 100 already removed. And if we go to the upcoming page, which we're already on, we can now abort launches by pressing this X right next to the corresponding launch. Let's give this a go. Check it out. Our launch has been aborted. We can now add launches by scheduling them through our mission control dashboard, scheduling them for launch, and then aborting them as necessary right in our upcoming page. Finally, if a launch is aborted, it appears on the history page as an unsuccessful launch with this red indicator next to it. We've completed the basic functionality of our NASA Mission Control dashboard. Congratulations! I'll see you again in the next video.